If you're a principal level software engineer, you should really consider a stint at Amazon working as a principal engineer there. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own personal experience working as a principal engineer in the digital division at Amazon, and spill the beans about some of the things that make it such a great gig. Hi, I'm John Miller, the Deliberate Engineer. I spent much of the last 30 years working in big tech as a software engineer, and 15 of those working at the principal level at several different companies. As a principal level software engineer, my experience at Amazon was head and shoulders above my experience at both Microsoft and Google in terms of how enjoyable it was and how much it felt like I was able to accomplish. After working at Amazon, every time I looked at changing jobs, Amazon was the first place I thought of because the principal engineer experience was so good. So, what does a principal engineer do? And second, what makes being principal engineer such a great gig at Amazon? Principal engineer is a great gig if you want to take on large technical challenges and accomplish huge things, and that you're not necessarily wedded to doing the majority of the coding yourself. Now, there are principal engineers out there who spend the majority of their time coding, but I would say that it's really a very small minority. A more typical example would be principal engineers who spend 20% or less of their time coding, with the rest of it being still spent on technical activities, but not actually generating code. Instead, a principal engineer is typically giving advice, taking a look at the project at the specification and at the design stages, helping to make sure everything fits together nicely, that the goals are attainable, and even helping to revise the goals of the project to make sure that you have something that can be done, shipped, and then incremented on moving forward. The principal engineer will help make sure that the project is set up with a minimum viable product and that there's a good runway for the functionality that will be added later. They make sure that the deployment and the maintenance stories are good, that there's good metrics and ways of being able to troubleshoot what's happening with it, and many, many other operational things, as well as a preliminary design. Much of what makes a principal engineer valuable is their previous experience, typically working multiple revisions of a single project. They may have done this multiple times, but they've done it for at least one project where they've made a series of design choices, watched them be made, and then seen the results of that. This is the kind of first-hand experience that companies are paying for when they hire a principal engineer, and it's invaluable. The difference between a project succeeding and a project failing often comes down to the experience of the people who are designing and scoping out that project. In other words, principal engineers. A principal engineer also acts as a force multiplier for projects. Typically, the scale of project that they'll be working on involves multiple teams, each of which is working on sub-projects. The principal engineer takes a look at these, helps reconcile them, and makes sure that they're aligned well, they have appropriate interfaces, and that they're going to be delivered in a way that will benefit the entire project. They establish and reinforce practices that will result in a good engineering product. They communicate status throughout the life cycle of the product, working with the different teams and different levels of managers who need to be kept informed. One of the things that a principal engineer provides is the face of somebody who's trusted and who's proven their technical judgment is sound, so that when they say things are on track or the right things are happening or explain how some problem is going to be mitigated, they can be trusted by the rest of the company. If this sounds like a lot of fun, well, in my opinion, it is. It's one of the funnest jobs you can get in all of software. You don't necessarily deliver a whole lot of code yourself, but you get to do these huge projects that you could never do just on your own and have a real impact on them. Plus, you get to work with a lot of other people, collaborating, mentoring, doing all kinds of things that once you try it out, it's actually pretty fun. So I absolutely recommend it. I think it's a sweet spot for somebody to work for a while in their career. That's a description of what a general principal engineering role is. But what makes the role so much better at Amazon than at the other places I've worked? Well, one of the first things is it's a formally defined role that acts as sort of a nexus point for all the work that's being done throughout the company. Amazon is taking great pains to have it not just be, oh, you should go talk to this guy, but have it be one of the gates for projects at different times. For example, when they're design complete and when the project is ready to deliver towards the end. At a very minimum, you have to talk to principal engineers at those times, which means you don't get these projects sort of slipping through the cracks that wind up being disasters. In addition to this, Amazon has a curated principal engineer community. In other words, they actually have people whose job it is to get all the principal engineers together to make sure they talk to each other and to have them be able to sort of cover for each other if there's not enough principal engineers in a particular area, or if somebody happens to have some past experience that's very applicable to it. This is something, again, I haven't seen in any other company. There's been some initiatives at Microsoft to try and build engineering community, but they fall far short of what the principal engineering community at Amazon actually is. This isn't to say that being a principal engineer at Amazon is uniform across the whole company. Even though the principal engineers get together and talk frequently, the divisions that they work in are very different. When I worked at Amazon, there were 3 principal divisions for software. One of them was the retail group, which maintains the fulfillment and the retail website. The second was AWS, Amazon Web Services, which provides a set of cloud services for people to build applications on. And the third one was the digital division, which includes the various devices that are shipped by Amazon, Kindle infrastructure, and all the back-end services that support these. These 3 divisions have very different flavors. The retail product selling books through Amazon was really the first thing that Amazon had. It's the most mature of all the different divisions, and also sort of the most resistant to change because they have a lot of infrastructure there that they've been relying on for years. AWS is sort of the middle ground where they have a variety of different teams building things, and they are always looking for new things to do. Depending on the team you're on, they don't necessarily have a lot of old stuff to maintain, but on the other hand, there are teams in AWS that have been doing what they're doing for 20 years, and this means a certain level of maturity in their engineering product. The final group is digital, the group I was in. They ship the Kindle, they ship the different Fire devices, including Fire Tablet. They own both the client side of these things and all the back-end services to make it possible. Now, digital has been a lot more like the Wild West, at least it was when I was there, which means you moved very quickly, you got to get things out faster than you'd ever believe, but this also meant that there was a lot of work being done with very short time horizons and lots of new innovation in them. In other words, a formula for fun. So how did it work when I was in the digital division? Well, just like I said before, when people were designing a product or a service, they would come and talk to me, run the designs past me, and then they would go ahead and start producing them. I'd give them a certain amount of advice. Typically they would take it. They had to at least say what they were going to do or not do, but they were free to sort of have their own destiny. On the other hand, a manager for a group that ignores feedback from a principal knows that they're taking a chance, because if things fail the way that the principal is warning about, they had documented knowledge that this was a possibility. In addition to my work for the digital division, I was also invited to do principal reviews for other areas, and so I got to learn a little bit about the philosophy and the way things were done in retail, for example, and to a lesser extent, how things worked in AWS. Overall, it was awesome. It was really a way to connect with the rest of the company and feel like not just an architect sitting in a group, but a member of the principal engineering community helping to guide the whole company. That is something you don't typically get in a big company unless you're in a very senior executive role. So it's absolutely awesome as a software engineer. So explaining a little more about the value that the company gets out of having principal engineers working in these different areas. I already had a lot of experience building services and building products at a variety of different companies by the time I came to Amazon. So when somebody was considering a particular design, or if they were working in a particular domain, in some cases, I was sort of a world-level expert in that domain, and I could give them very sound advice and also explain why it was good advice and why they should at least think about it. So as I worked in Amazon, I reviewed a bunch of different projects. I helped give them advice that kept them from making sort of first and second generation mistakes. They were able to ship a more mature product as their first version. That's extremely valuable because it lets the team concentrate on moving things forward and on growing the service rather than fixing all the problems that came up earlier. In addition to this, since my expertise was largely in security and in networking protocols, I was able to discourage them from rolling their own protocols in cases where something already existed. I guess it's like an elevator. You don't necessarily realize what you've got until it stops working. Now with security protocols, the general advice is don't build your own if there's any way you can use something that exists, and I helped push that forward while I was there, which I'm proud of. In addition to helping the projects, I was also working with the senior engineers who were executing these projects, and the questions I asked and the things I was looking at, I was also helping mentor them and helping them to understand what they should be looking at moving forward. Again, this is something that can be very valuable to the company. Amazon has gotten some bad press recently about the work environment and how hard things are as an engineer there. That may be true for some of the more junior engineers or in particular divisions. My personal experience when I was at Amazon was it was a great place to work. I really enjoyed it. I got to grow, and in general people got to deliver things much faster than they ever would at any other company, which is a big plus if you're trying to make your bones. So I think it's a great place to work, and I still think about it every time I'm poking my head up and thinking about looking for a new job. If they were a little closer to my home, I think they would definitely be a top contender. I hope this has helped give you some insight into why principal engineer is a good role, and in particular why Amazon is a great place to be a principal engineer. You're welcome to contact me if you have any questions about it. If you are a principal level engineer, I'll tell you what I think and what I know, sort of without any varnishing on top of it. You'll get kind of an unfiltered picture of it. If you've been a principal engineer at Amazon, or you know people who have, or if you have different experiences, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Also, if you like hearing about the different companies and what makes them good or bad, please think about giving a like and subscribing to this video. That helps me understand that people want to see more of this type of content. Well, thanks for making it this far, and keep on pushing forward.